Here we go.
Okay.
Hello, this is Richard Carranza with Houston Energy Industry News. I am interviewing Steve Cooper today. He works with Quorum Software, and he is vice president in the data management space. Steve, it's good to have you today.
Good morning.
And thank you for the interview. And Steve, why don't you tell us about us? Why don't you tell us about yourself so we can know a little bit more about you?
Sure. So I came out of the UK. I was actually in mining engineering. So I did a bachelor's of engineering and postgraduate studies at Nottingham University and graduated from there. There wasn't a lot left in the mining industry when I graduated, so I actually pivoted across to the oil and gas industry and moved to America. And over a period of quite a bit of time, I ended up as CIO of IHS Energy, and up until about 2007, around the time they went public, and so at that time decided to start my own company, which was Energy IQ, and we grew Energy IQ. Focused on oil and gas well life cycle data management, grew it over a period of 12 years, and then earlier this year we were acquired by Quorum, and so that's where I sit today.
Great. I mean, a question comes up in my mind. You have a degree in mining engineering.
Yep.
How did you get into information and programming and that sort of thing?
Well, it was really that it was, the short version of it was I was working doing my postgraduate, and it was around the time that kind of computers moved from the mainframe to the desktop, and so we had started doing underground surveying. So we were surveying using theodolites and distance measurement equipment, but capturing it on electronic devices, but there was no software to actually do anything with that data. And so I was at the university, and with a couple of other guys, we actually developed software to extract the data and automate the calculation of surveys. And that's really what got me moving down the data path.
Wow. Sounds very similar to oil well logging. And so what are your functions there at Quorum? What are you up to these days?
Well, the reason that Quorum acquired Energy IQ was, they have a lot of applications, some great applications along, they deal with different aspects of asset management along the well life cycle, and they needed a well master to tie everything together. And so the reason they acquired us is because we had, what was industry leading well master data management solution. So a lot of my focus these days is now we have both parties together, how we're going to tie these applications together along the well lifecycle and start to automate workflows in that space. So that's really my role, is more on the product strategy and direction side to say, okay, this is what we have, this is where we need to go. So I spend a lot of my time talking to people in industry to understand, where's the industry going, where's technology going, and how do we fit our solutions to make sure we're meeting the needs of customers in the future.
Right. That leads me now to my most important question, actually.
Okay.
Now that you've touched on that, I know your philosophy about things, and the reason why I wanted to interview you is because your philosophy sounds radical.
Oh, it does. Okay.
I go to so many meetings. By the way, I'll confess, I go to like 10 meetings a month, conferences.
Okay.
And I talk to so many people, and the experience has been so rewarding. However, one of the things that I've seen is, how can I put this nicely? There's such a rush to get bigger, to get faster, to load up on the cloud servers and load up on the edge servers, and increase the data transfer and to, get this artificial intelligence and everything going. But I don't see a whole lot of effort being taken on preparing before they take the data, to be able to say, well, okay, how are we going to take the data? How are we going to line it up? How are we going to store it? How are we going to satisfy this user? How are we going to satisfy that user? As you would say, you got to have a plan.
Yep.
Right? And that's one of the things that, at least from an outsider's point of view, that I see is really missing, that the attitude in industry is, just take it all. But sir, we need to do it, just get it done. Gotta, everything. I want everything. How do you see things from the point of view of having a plan?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. To start with, is I've been able to spend the last couple of years really talking to people and looking at things and trying to make sense of what people refer to as the digital transformation, because it's a commonly used term, and it's like, okay, what does it actually mean? And I think for a lot of people, a lot of CIOs are under pressure. CEOs are under pressure to show that
Oh yeah.
the moving to the future, that they are investing heavily in the digital world. But the problem is the old jumped in at the kind of the sexy level. So you're dealing with your visualization of data, you're dealing with analytics, artificial intelligence. So you can stand up in front of people and say, oh yeah, we got a data lake. It's like, well, what was happening is people were just throwing whatever they could get their hands on into a data lake and then relying on software to make sense of it.
Right.
And it quickly became apparent, it doesn't work. And that big data will not overcome bad data. And so people have started to take a step back and say, we got to understand the foundations. And another commonly an overused term is data governance, but it doesn't make it wrong. Data governance is very, very important. You got to understand, what's the data you're dealing with and who's going to use it, and put common terminology in place and all of that. And I heard a remarkable statistic the other day, actually, and I was talking to a CIO of one of the oil companies, and he'd done a lot of research outside the oil and gas industry on companies who've been industries that have been through this already. And he said that data quality was the biggest issue for those guys, and that they will spend up to 95% of the time actually cleaning and preparing data. I don't know if the numbers are right, but it's still
Not right to
remarkable.
me.
And so they're spending 3 to 5% of the time actually using the data. And so the world, I come from is, we're spending a lot of time actually on things like governance, data quality, business rules, business logic around that. And so when I talk about planning, I see lots of people diving into this digital transformation without a strategy in place. It's where are you trying to get to, and what's a plan for getting there? And the plan has to start with the foundations. It's like the old analogy: you can't build a house without digging the foundations.
Yeah. Whatever happened to junk in, junk out?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I mean about planning and strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. I talked to a fellow at a conference over here at the Rice Oil and Gas High Performance Computing Conference a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And he was telling me about how it's okay to just get it, just get that data, because data is money. Well, I have to agree with that. I can't argue there.
Yeah.
He says, like for instance, credit cards, he says, predicting consumer patterns and preferences and this and that. I said, I know, but if you just go out there and just grab a handful of it without really organizing it, what good is it? And he says, well, that's what we're going to use. What's that called? AI.
Yep.
Let the AI figure it out. And I mean, it sounds good, but I just don't buy it. How do you feel about that? Just let AI take care of it.
Well, I think that's where people started, a couple of years ago, and ran into a lot of issues. I worked with one company who, they had gone out and hired nine, very expensive data analysts, and but without the industry experience or the industry knowledge, and they really struggled because there's some weirdness about the oil and gas industry, and if you don't understand that, I don't see how any technology can help you if you don't understand the basic rules.
Exactly.
So my feeling is, if I take, we blend well data from many different sources, and it's all identified differently and inconsistently. And, even if you talk about something as fundamental as the API number, you can't trust it. So you got to understand those basic business rules. But I'm definitely not against, AI and machine learning. As long as you get that foundation, you can drive terrific value from that. But you got to have the basics in place, is my opinion.
I agree. I got my master's degree in chemical engineering from Texas A&M University.
Nice.
And I did do a experimental master's degree, but I'm also a very good programmer. Back then, I was programming in Fortran, and I'm as good as anybody when it comes to programming. But I remember that to take the data, you had to have a plan, you had to have control variables, you had to know what you had to know that when you measure something, that number is going to be right, and I think they call it design of experiments and stuff like that. So I'm glad you said that, because it's really been on my mind for a long time, with regard to what I've been seeing in the industry. One thing that I want to know is, as far as Houston goes, we're energy here. Everything is about energy. And I was just wondering, what kind of new things do you see at Quorum, you rolling out for us here in Houston to help us do our old business more?
Well, I think, what we're moving towards is really to focus on workflow automation, to take the, try and eliminate sort of the gut feel and, manual type of mistakes that occur in any workflows. So if I'm moving data from one space to another, it's very easy. That's the point of high risk when you're moving data around. Somebody fat fingers something, or you get something in one format, you try to convert it to another. What we'll see coming out of Quorum is really a focus on the automation of workflows. They've got, the company has a lot of applications along, for managing assets. If we can streamline the movement of, not just the movement of data, but the automated triggering of activities. So if I generate a new well in one application, maybe, it puts a stub record in an AFE application that somebody doesn't, so you're not sending an email to somebody and saying, hey, can you add this, or we just created this new well. It just automatically flows through the life cycle.
Oh.
We have to face that the industry's going to operate much leaner. It has in the last year, since the last downturn.
Sure.
Coming out of this, you're going to have companies who are going to survive have to invest in technology that's going to allow them to automate a lot of processes in the past have been manual. I may even go as far as some of the basic geologic interpretation as well.
How do you see your company functioning with regards to, I guess in my terminology, it would be called process control, or the control of equipment with your data, and maybe even, how do you see you getting into reliability?
It's probably not a question I'm that qualified to answer.
Okay.
On behalf of Quorum. They do have great solutions around through their acquisition of FlowCal, but it's not an area that I'd be qualified to opine on.
And so most of your applications are out at the wellhead and drilling and in oil production. You don't really get much into the refining petrochemicals space.
Again, Quorum's products cover the full gamut from upstream to midstream to downstream. my expertise is around upstream data management. So
Oh, I
I
didn't
get
know.
myself in trouble if I start offering opinions on the field level. But they have it's fair to say they have software that covers
The whole thing.
most aspects.
Oh, good, good. I was unaware of the entire spectrum being covered. And it's been really great talking to you. Thank you for agreeing to join me because I think I have definitely gotten something valuable, and I hope and I know that the people who visit my website will enjoy listening to our talk. Thanks again.
I appreciate the invite, and good to catch up anytime.
All right.